My daughter banned me from her wedding because I was too poor. An embarrassment. She had no idea that the venue, the guests, even the ground she stood on, belonged to me. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. This story starts where I'm most comfortable. My workshop. The smell of sawdust was home. Pine and walnut. My hands were rough, calloused from 15 years of honest work. I ran a hand over a rocking chair I was restoring. It felt real. It felt grounded. This was the life I chose for my daughter, Chloe. I was just Arthur, the neighborhood handyman, the guy with the rusty Ford truck. That was the plan. A plan born in a hospital room. 15 years ago. The smell of antiseptic and dying flowers still haunted me. I gripped my wife Sarah's hand. Her beautiful eyes were fading. We were rich, filthy rich. We owned half the city skyline. But wealth changes people. It builds walls. It attracts the wrong kind of attention. Sarah knew. Her biggest fear wasn't death. It was what our money would do to Chloe. She was only 10. Protect her, Arthur, Sarah whispered. Her voice was weak, frail as dry leaves. Don't let the money poison her. Teach her humility. Teach her the value of a hard day's work. Make her kind. I promised her. I promised her everything. So I did it. I walked away from the corner office. I locked the fortune away. My lawyer, Robert, my oldest friend, handled everything. He was the only one who knew the truth. I sold the mansion on the hill. I bought this small, sagging house. I picked up a hammer. I became a ghost. I wanted Chloe to see sweat, not entitlement. I gave her the best schools, opportunities I never had. But I made her believe it came from fixing sinks and building cabinets. I thought I was building character, but maybe I was just building resentment. For a while it worked. She was a sweet kid, proud of her builder daddy. We had pancake breakfasts on Saturdays, movie nights on Fridays. We were a team. I thought the foundation was solid. I couldn't have been more wrong. She grew up. She attended those elite private schools I insisted on. She saw how the other kids lived, the cars, the vacations, the easy money. The bubble I built started to crack. The sawdust that smelled like home to me, it started to smell like failure to her. Humility was replaced by hunger, a desperate gnawing hunger for status. She wanted the life I had hidden from her. And then the sharks started circling. And then she met Mark. Mark was an investment banker. That meant expensive suits, a leased sports car, and a loud voice. He talked constantly about deals that never seemed to close. He oozed arrogance. I disliked him the moment I saw him. He came from a family that valued appearances above all else. His mother, Susan, was the queen bee of the city's social scene, a woman draped in pearls and judgment. Mark saw Chloe as an acquisition, a prize to be shown off. And Chloe, she clung to him like a life raft. She wanted to escape my shadow, the shadow of perceived poverty. She thought he was her savior. He was just the bait. The first real crack appeared 6 months ago. The engagement party, an exclusive country club, a place filled with people who inherited their worth. I wore my best suit, the one I wore to Sarah's funeral. It felt tight around the shoulders, stiff, uncomfortable. I felt the stares the moment I walked in, the whispers, the polite, cold smiles. They looked right through me, or worse, they looked down on me. Susan approached me. Her smile was tight, her eyes cold. She stopped just a little too close. Her perfume was overwhelming. She looked at my hands, my rough, calloused hands. A flicker of disgust crossed her face. The room suddenly felt too warm. "Arthur," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "so glad you could make it." "It must be hard getting time off work," she said, work like it was a dirty word. I felt a flush creep up my neck. I wanted to tell her that my work paid for the champagne she was drinking, but I stayed silent. I swallowed the insult. For Chloe. Chloe avoided me all night. She was dazzling the crowd, laughing too loudly, playing the part of the society princess. When I finally managed to congratulate her, her smile was strained. "Thanks, Dad," she said. Her eyes darted around the room. Nervous. Afraid someone might see her talking to me. Then came the blow I didn't see coming. "Try not to talk too much about carpentry, okay?" she whispered. "It's boring for these people. Boring. My life's work. My sacrifice. Boring." My ears rang. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. I went home early. The silence of my small house echoed the emptiness in my chest. I thought that was the worst it could get, that the real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows. Now the wedding was just 2 weeks away. The crack had become a canyon. I was in my workshop, varnishing the rocking chair. The repetitive motion usually calmed me. Not today. That's when I found out. My neighbor, Mrs. Davis, stopped by. A kind old woman. I fixed her plumbing last week. She had apple pie. "Oh, Arthur, Chloe's wedding invitations are simply divine," she gushed. She set the pie on my workbench. My niece received one yesterday. Gold lettering, so thick. My hand froze. The brush hovered over the wood. "And they are having it at the Grand Orchard Estate," she continued, oblivious. "How wonderful!" My heart stopped. The Grand Orchard is the most expensive, most exclusive venue in the state. The invitations were out, and I hadn't received one. I told myself it was a mistake. The mail was slow. Chloe was busy. Planning a wedding for 200 people is overwhelming. Maybe she was going to hand-deliver it. A special moment. I clung to these excuses, these fragile threads of hope, but a cold dread settled in my stomach. I knew the truth. It wasn't a mistake. It was intentional, and that realization cut deeper than any knife. The days ticked by. The silence from Chloe was deafening. I couldn't let it sit.
I had to hear it from her. I had to know why.
I had to look her in the eye and see the daughter I raised. I washed the grease from my hands, scrubbed until the skin was raw, but I didn't change my clothes. I was who I was. Flannel shirt, worn jeans. If that wasn't good enough, then nothing was. I drove downtown, to the sleek high-rise where Chloe lived, a tower of glass and steel, cold and impersonal. The doorman eyed me with suspicion. He looked me up and down, taking in my boots, my worn jacket. He let me up after I gave him my name. Reluctantly, I stood outside her door. 22. I took a deep breath. I knocked. The sound echoed in the empty hallway. The door swung open. Chloe stood there, champagne flute in hand. Silk robe. Her hair was perfect. Middle of the afternoon. She looked surprised. Not happy, surprised. Annoyed. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "You should have called." Her voice was tight, unwelcoming. "Hi, sweetheart." I tried to keep my voice steady, tried to keep the hurt hidden. I heard the invitations went out. They sound beautiful. Oh, yes, they are. She didn't move. She stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance.
Like I was a salesman or a stranger.
From inside I heard Mark's voice. "Who is it, babe?" Mark appeared behind her, arrogant even in his casual wear. He looked at me with contempt. A smirk played on his lips. He was enjoying this. "It's just my father, Mark," Chloe said, turning slightly. "Hello, Arthur," Mark said stiffly. He never called me Dad or Mr. Evans, always Arthur. Like I was the help. The silence stretched, thick, uncomfortable. I finally asked the question, burning in my chest. "Chloe, I didn't get my invitation." I offered her an easy out, a chance to apologize, to fix this. I thought maybe it got lost in the mail. Chloe flushed deep red. She looked at Mark, a silent, desperate plea for help. She couldn't even look me in the eye. Mark stepped forward. He put a possessive hand on her shoulder. He was taking control. "Arthur, let's be blunt," Mark said. His voice was smooth, cold as steel. "This wedding is very exclusive. We had to be very selective with the guest list." "Selective?" I echoed, my voice hardening. "Our professional circles," Mark continued, gesturing vaguely. "The elite of the city. You understand?" "I understand a guest list," I said. The anger was starting to burn. "I don't understand why the father of the bride isn't on it." Chloe wrung her hands. She finally looked at me, but her expression wasn't soft. It was disgusted. "Dad, look at you." She gestured vaguely at my work clothes. "This isn't a backyard barbecue. This is an elite event. Mark's partners will be there. The mayor will be there. So you're embarrassed by me." It wasn't a question. It was a fact. The truth hung in the air between us, ugly and undeniable. "No, it's not that," she protested weakly. But her eyes told the truth. Lies. She always avoided eye contact when she lied. "It is that, Chloe," Mark cut in. He wasn't just delivering the message. He was twisting the blade. Mark leaned in, his voice low and condescending. He looked me up and down, slowly, deliberately, taking in every stain on my shirt, every scuff on my boots. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. "Let's be honest, Arthur," Mark said. "You're a handyman. You're a poor man." He said the words like they tasted foul in his mouth. "There's frankly no place for someone like you there. It would make the other guests uncomfortable. It would reflect poorly on us. It would damage our image." The words hit me like physical blows. Poor man, no place for someone like you. Damage our image. I looked at Chloe, my daughter, the little girl I sacrificed everything for. She just stared at the floor. That silence cut deeper than any word. "I see," I said softly. A strange calm settled over me. The pain was so deep it went numb. I looked at my daughter. I didn't recognize her. She was a stranger. "We'll organize a small dinner later, Dad. Just us," she offered, a pitiful attempt to soften the blow. A crumb from her table. I didn't rage. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just smiled. A sad, knowing smile. It held decades of secrets she knew nothing about. "Don't worry about it, Chloe. I understand perfectly." I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I heard the door click shut behind me. The sound was sharp. Final. The war had just begun. When I got back to my workshop, I locked the door. The familiar smell of sawdust couldn't comfort me tonight. The silence felt heavy, suffocating. I walked to the back corner. An old, locked filing cabinet stood there, covered in dust, the ghost of my past life. I pulled a small key from the chain around my neck, the chain Sarah had given me. I unlocked it. Inside weren't invoices or blueprints. There were contracts, deeds, corporate charters, the remnants of my former life, the keys to the kingdom. I picked up my phone. I dialed the number I hadn't used in months. "Robert? It's Arthur." Robert answered immediately. He always did. "Arthur, what's wrong? You sound different, colder." "She didn't invite me to the wedding, Robert," I said. The words tasted like ash. "She said I was too poor, too embarrassing." I took a shaky breath. She said it was an elite event. No place for a poor man like me. There was a long, stunned silence. Robert knew the truth. He knew the sacrifices. He knew the promise I made to Sarah. "Arthur, I'm so sorry," Robert finally said. His voice was thick with emotion. "She's gone too far this time. This is unforgivable." "Yes, she has," I agreed. I looked at the picture of Sarah on my desk. Her smiling face seemed to urge me onward, demanding justice. "Robert," I said, my decision was firm. "It's time. Set the plan in motion. The Revelation Protocol." "Are you sure, Arthur?" Robert asked cautiously. "This is a nuclear option. Once you reveal the truth this way, there's no going back. It will humiliate her in front of everyone she values." "What relationship, Robert? She already cut me out. She values status more than her own father." I paused. The next words were the hardest. "If I let this happen, if I just fade away quietly, then I have truly failed. Sarah, I didn't protect Chloe. I created a monster. It's time to tear down the walls." The next 2 weeks were a mobilization, a war I never wanted to fight. While Chloe was busy with cake tastings and dress fittings, I was busy with board meetings. The sleeping giant was waking up. I met Robert at his downtown office, the headquarters of Evans Global Enterprises. Glass and steel, sweeping views of the city skyline. A stark contrast to my workshop. Robert was the public face of the company. I was the silent owner, the ghost in the machine. We started digging. I needed to know the full extent of the situation. First, the venue, the Grand Orchard Estate. Robert pulled up the records. He navigated the complex web of holding companies we used to hide my ownership. He paused. A slow smile spread across his face. "Well, Arthur," he said, turning the screen towards me, "the Grand Orchard Estate. Seems you bought it 8 years ago. It's yours." The irony was almost too much. She was excluding me from a venue I owned, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. Next, we looked into Mark and his family. This was the part that worried me. I knew Chloe was blinded by ambition, but I suspected something more sinister with Mark and Susan. Robert put his best forensic accountants on it. The results came back 48 hours later. They were worse than I imagined. "They're drowning in debt, Arthur," Robert reported. He spread the financial statements across his desk. It was a sea of red ink. Mark's investment banking career is a facade. He hasn't closed a significant deal in years. He's essentially a glorified salesman living on credit. Robert pointed to a line item. His mother, Susan, has mortgaged their family home, the one they brag about constantly, to the hilt. They need to maintain the appearance of wealth. They are over-leveraged and desperate. The banks are closing in. So they're after Chloe's money, I concluded. A cold fury rose in my chest. I had set up a substantial trust fund for Chloe, separate from my main fortune, accessible when she turned 25 or got married. Enough for a comfortable life. Not enough to corrupt her, or so I thought. Exactly, Robert confirmed. They see Chloe as their lifeline. This wedding isn't a celebration, it's a merger, a hostile takeover of your assets. It all made sense now. The urgency of the wedding, the extravagance, the cold dismissal of me. They needed Chloe's money. They couldn't risk me interfering. They saw me as a poor, weak old man, someone who could be easily brushed aside. They underestimated me. That was their first mistake. But we weren't done digging. I needed more leverage. I needed to know everything. I told Robert to look into Mark's professional life. Robert made a few calls. He set up a meeting with Mr. Harrison, a senior partner at the firm where Mark worked. We met Harrison at an upscale steakhouse. He was an older man, sharp eyes, expensive suit. He didn't waste time. "Arthur Evans, it's an honor to finally meet the legend," Harrison said, shaking my hand firmly. He recognized my name instantly. "Robert tells me you have questions about Mark." "I do," I said. "He's marrying my daughter." Harrison sighed. He signaled the waiter for another drink. "Mark is a liability, Arthur," Harrison said bluntly. "He's all flash, no substance. He wines and dines clients on the company card, but he brings in nothing." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "We were actually planning to let him go after the holidays. Frankly, we assumed he came from money. That was his appeal. It seems we were mistaken. So Mark wasn't just broke. He was a fraud, and he was about to be unemployed. He needed Chloe's money more desperately than I realized. But the betrayal went even deeper. There was another piece of the puzzle. Chloe's friends. Robert had been monitoring communications. He found something disturbing. Chloe's maid of honor, Maria, a girl Chloe had known since high school. "Arthur, you need to see this," Robert said, handing me a printout of emails. Maria had been communicating secretly with Susan, feeding her information about Chloe's trust fund. The exact amounts, the access clauses. Susan promised her a finder's fee, Robert explained. 10% of the initial withdrawal. My daughter wasn't just being manipulated by her fiancé and his mother. She was being betrayed by her best friend. The rot went deep. And it didn't stop there. We needed to understand Susan's desperation. Robert reached out to David Chen, a rival developer who had clashed with Susan in the past. Chen met us at his office. He was amused by our interest. Chen laughed. "She's a viper, but a desperate one. She actually approached me last month, tried to sell me information about her future daughter-in-law's trust fund, said she could guarantee access. I was stunned. She was actively trying to monetize Chloe before the wedding even happened. I turned her down, of course," Chen said. "Too messy. But it shows you what kind of woman she is." "But why? Why the obsession with status and money?" Robert found the answer by speaking with Eleanor Vance, an old society matron who knew everyone's secrets. Robert met her for tea. He came back with a file. "Susan grew up poor, Arthur," Robert explained. "Dirt poor. Her family was involved in a scandal. Her father was arrested for embezzlement. They lost everything. She clawed her way into society. Married Mark's father for his name. She's terrified of losing it all again. It all clicked into place. Susan wasn't just arrogant. She was terrified, and terrified people do desperate things. We had them cornered. Now it was time to strike. If this story proves that actions always have consequences, let us know by hitting like and subscribing right now. We need your help to keep sharing these vital life lessons. While I prepared my countermove, I kept tabs on Chloe. She and Mark were spending money like water, upgraded flowers, the menu, the entertainment. They booked a famous violinist. They were already dipping into the trust fund, using the marriage clause to access the funds early. The arrogance was staggering. A week before the wedding, I decided to test the waters. I needed to see how deep the rot went in my own daughter. The rehearsal dinner was that evening, an exclusive downtown restaurant. I knew I wasn't invited. I went anyway. I put on my old suit, drove downtown. I saw Mark and Susan standing outside, greeting guests. Looking like royalty, I parked my rusty truck and started walking towards them. Mark saw me first. His face darkened with anger. He quickly whispered something to the two large security guards by the door. They shifted their weight, ready for action. As I reached the entrance, the guards stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Can I help you, sir?" one of them asked, his tone polite. "Firm. I'm here for the rehearsal dinner," I said. "I'm the father of the bride." "I'm sorry, sir. Your name is not on the list." The words were rehearsed, cold, final. I looked past them. I saw Chloe inside, laughing with Maria. She saw me. Our eyes locked. For a moment, a flicker of recognition, a flash of panic. I waited for her to come out, to intervene, to acknowledge me. Instead, she turned away quickly, pretending she hadn't seen me, erasing me from our reality. Mark stepped forward, a triumphant smirk on his face. He walked slowly towards me, his expensive shoes clicking on the pavement. He stopped inches from my face. His breath smelled of expensive wine. He looked at me like I was garbage. The surrounding chatter died down. "There seems to be a misunderstanding, Arthur," he said, his voice loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "This is a private party. I must ask you to leave." The humiliation burned. Sharp, intense. But I held my ground. "I just wanted to congratulate my daughter." "You can do that later," Mark said dismissively. "Now, leave, before we have you removed for trespassing." I turned and walked away. The sound of their laughter followed me down the street. It was a sound I would never forget. They thought they had won. They thought I was broken. They were about to learn that even old wood can burn. The next day, I went to my safe. I took out a small velvet box. Inside was Sarah's engagement ring, a beautiful, vintage diamond. It had been in her family for generations. Simple, elegant, timeless. I had planned to give it to Chloe on her wedding day. It was the most precious thing I owned. It was a piece of Sarah. I drove back to her apartment. This time, Susan opened the door. She looked surprised. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Arthur, what a surprise," she said. Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "I brought a gift for Chloe," I said, holding out the box. "It was my wife's. I wanted Chloe to have it." Susan took the box, opened it. She looked at the ring with disdain. Her lips curled slightly. She held the ring up to the light, squinting at it as if it were a cheap trinket. She turned it over in her hand, her expression souring. The silence was cold, judgmental. "It's a bit quaint, isn't it?" she said. "Chloe prefers modern designs. Platinum. This looks rather old-fashioned, and the stone is rather small." She handed the box back to me. "We appreciate the thought, Arthur, but it's not really her style. She's wearing the diamonds Mark bought her." I took the box. My heart ached. It wasn't just a rejection of the gift. It was a rejection of Sarah, of everything we stood for. Love, loyalty, true value. I swallowed hard. Maybe she was right. Maybe I never did belong in their world. "I understand," I said quietly. Susan leaned against the doorframe, a cruel smile on her lips. "Look, Arthur, I know this is hard for you, but you have to understand our position. My family has a reputation. And frankly, having someone like you associated with us, it's damaging. She reached into her purse, pulled out a checkbook. The sound of the leather was loud in the quiet hallway. Look, she said, scribbling something down. I want to make things right. We don't want any unpleasantness. Here's $10,000. A small token to smooth things over. She paused, looked me up and down. Maybe you could take a little vacation? Get out of town for the weekend? It would be best for everyone. I looked at the check, then back at her. She was trying to buy me off. Pay me to disappear, to erase my existence from their perfect picture. I took the check, slowly tore it in half. Let the pieces flutter to the floor. I don't need your money, Susan, I said. My voice was calm, firm. And I won't be taking a vacation. Susan's face flushed with anger. You stubborn old fool. Don't you dare show up at that wedding. If you embarrass us, you'll regret it. I won't embarrass you, I promised. I'll enlighten you. I walked away, leaving her standing there, sputtering with impotent rage. The battle lines were drawn. The day before the wedding, Chloe called. My heart leaped when I saw her name. Maybe this was it. Maybe she was calling to apologize, to realize the cruelty. Dad? Her voice was stressed, frantic. Chloe, I'm here. I held my breath. We had an unexpected expense, she said quickly. No preamble, no apology, just a demand. The florist messed up the order. We need to import new flowers overnight from Holland. It's incredibly expensive, and Mark's mother is insisting on it. I waited. The silence stretched. And I need money. Dad? Her voice dropped to a whisper, but it was still demanding. Mark is tied up with his investments. I've reached the limit on the trust fund advance. Can you help me out? Just a small loan. I'll pay you back after the wedding. It was incredible. She had called me a poor man, uninvited me from her wedding, humiliated me, and now she was asking for money. The entitlement was breathtaking. How much? I asked. Curious how far she would go. $30,000. Small loan, $30,000. More than she thought I made in a year. I don't have that kind of money lying around, Chloe, I said, keeping my voice calm. You know my situation. She sighed dramatically. Dad, please, don't make this difficult. I know you have savings. Just this once. This is my wedding day. Don't you want me to be happy? I can give you 500, I said. That was the amount in my emergency jar in the workshop. There was a pause. A sharp intake of breath. A cold, stunned silence. 500? Her voice dripped with contempt. What am I supposed to do with $500? That won't even cover the delivery fee. Her voice turned sharp, cruel, ugly. You are utterly useless. Sometimes I wonder why I even bother with you. She hung up. I sat in my workshop, the silence ringing in my ears. It was done. Any shred of doubt, any flicker of hope that my daughter was still in there somewhere, vanished. The betrayal was complete. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my workshop, holding Sarah's picture. The weight of my failure pressed down on me. Did I do the right thing, Sarah? I whispered into the darkness. Did I try too hard to protect her? Did I create this by hiding the truth? Did I teach her to be ashamed of honest work? The picture offered no answers. I felt a profound loneliness. Tomorrow wasn't just about confronting Chloe. It was about confronting my own mistakes and honoring the promise I made to the woman I loved. It was time to bring the empire home. The wedding day arrived. The weather was perfect, almost mockingly so. Blue skies, a gentle breeze, the perfect day for an elite event.
And put on my old suit.
Robert had sent a card that morning. Inside was a perfectly tailored Italian suit. It felt like armor. I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look like the quiet old handyman anymore. I looked like Arthur Evans, the man who built this city. I slipped Sarah's ring into my pocket. The car took me to a private airfield. Parked on the tarmac was a sleek, modern helicopter. The logo of Evans Global Enterprises subtly embossed on the side. Robert was waiting for me. Nervous, but resolute. He held a leather portfolio, the weapon of choice. Everything is in place, Arthur, he said, gripping my shoulder. The financial transactions are executed. The legal documents are ready. We have the emails from Maria, the statements from Harrison, Chen, and Vance. He checked his watch. The ceremony starts at 3:00 p.m. We'll arrive at 3:15 p.m. I nodded, unable to speak. The time for words was over. The flight over the city was surreal. I looked down at the buildings I owned, the streets I had paved, a kingdom I had built and then abandoned, a legacy I had hidden. As we approached the Grand Orchard estate, I could see the massive white tent, hundreds of chairs on the manicured lawn, the string quartet playing softly, a fairy tale wedding, a spectacle of wealth and status, everything Chloe ever wanted. I looked down and saw Chloe. She looked beautiful, a vision in white lace. She was walking down the aisle, leaning on Mark's arm. For a fleeting moment my resolve wavered. I saw the little girl running towards me with a skinned knee, the teenager crying on my shoulder after her first heartbreak. I wanted to turn back. I wanted to forget everything, just be her dad. But then I saw Mark, smug, self-satisfied, and Susan, beaming proudly in the front row, looking like the cat that got the cream. And I remembered the words, "There's no place for a poor man like you there." "It's time," I said to the pilot. The helicopter began its descent. The sound of the rotors was deafening. It drowned out the violinist, the officiant, the gentle breeze. Heads turned. People gasped. The ceremony stopped abruptly. The helicopter landed smoothly on the vast lawn, just a few hundred feet from the aisle. The wind from the blades whipped the flowers, sent the expensive decorations flying. The carefully arranged chairs toppled over. The illusion of perfection was shattered. I saw Chloe's face, confusion, then anger, then sheer horror as she realized who might be inside. The helicopter door opened. I stepped out. Robert was right behind me. The silence was absolute. The 200 elite guests stared at me. I wasn't wearing dusty flannel. I was wearing a suit that cost more than most of their cars. I didn't look tired and worn down. I looked like I owned the world. I started walking towards the aisle. As I passed the rows of guests, I recognized many of them. Business rivals, politicians, high society figures. They recognized me too. The whispers started. "Is that Arthur Evans? I thought he disappeared years ago. What is he doing here?" Chloe looked like she had seen a ghost. Her face was pale, mouth open in shock. Mark looked furious. "Who is this?" "Security," Mark shouted. But the security guards whom I employed stood frozen, recognizing their boss. I stopped right in front of the altar. The officiant looked utterly bewildered. "Hello, Chloe," I said. My voice was calm and clear, carrying in the sudden silence. "Dad?" she whispered, utterly confused, her voice trembling. "What are you doing? How did you look different." "I apologize for the interruption," I said, addressing the crowd. "I know I wasn't invited. My daughter felt I wasn't elite enough for this event. She said there was no place for a poor man like me here." The guests gasped. Chloe looked mortified. Susan looked faint. The perfect picture was cracking. "This man," Mark sputtered, pointing at me. "This man is a handyman. A carpenter. He's insane. Get him out of here." I turned to Mark. "You think you know who I am, young man? You think you understand wealth? You think this," I gestured around the lavish estate, "is the definition of success? You think wealth is about spending money you don't have, impressing people you don't like?" I looked at Robert. He nodded grimly. The storm was about to break. "You are marrying my daughter because you are bankrupt," I continued, my voice rising, cutting through the silence like a knife. "You and your mother are desperate. You saw my daughter's trust fund as your lifeline." Susan screamed, "How dare you? These are lies. Mark is a successful investment banker." "Is he?" I asked. I saw Mr. Harrison in the crowd. He looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Harrison," I called out, "your senior partner. He informed me that Mark is a fraud, and that he was about to be fired." Mark went white as a sheet. The crowd erupted in whispers. Harrison nodded grimly, confirming the truth. The financial ruin was exposed. I turned back to the crowd. My name is Arthur Evans, and yes, I am a carpenter. But I am also the chairman and sole owner of Evans Global Enterprises. The silence deepened. Evans Global was the largest real estate conglomerate in the region. Which means, I continued, I am the owner of this venue, the Grand Orchard Estate. This wedding is happening on my property. Chloe stared at me, realization dawning in her eyes. The horror was absolute. The ground beneath her feet was shifting. In the high-rise apartment you live in, Chloe. 22A, I own the building. I turned back to Susan. As for your desperation, Susan, we know about your mortgaged home. We know you tried to sell access to my daughter's trust fund to David Chen. Chen stood up, looking amused. It's true, she offered me a deal. I declined. Susan looked faint. Her reputation was shattering. I looked at Maria standing next to Chloe in her bridesmaid dress. And you, Maria, I said, your 10% finder's fee for betraying your best friend to Susan. 10% of 0 is still 0. Maria burst into tears, the betrayal exposed for everyone to see. Chloe looked at Maria, her eyes wide with shock and hurt. All the secrets were out. I turned back to Susan. As for your family home. Robert stepped forward, handed a document to Susan. What is this? She asked, her hands trembling. It's a notice of foreclosure, I said. Evans Global has acquired the mortgage on your home. Effective immediately. You have 30 days to vacate. Susan crumpled, sinking into her chair, sobbing hysterically. The queen bee had been dethroned. Mark looked pale and sick. And the trust fund you were counting on, Mark? I continued. The one Chloe has been using to finance this extravaganza. I pulled another document from the portfolio Robert handed me. This is a legal revocation of the trust, I announced, due to a morality clause violation. Specifically, the attempt to deceive and defraud the grantor and the gross mistreatment of the family patriarch. The funds are being redirected. Chloe fell to her knees. The reality of her situation crashed down on her. No, Dad, please. You can't do this. I love him. Mark looked at Chloe with utter contempt. The mask was gone. The vulture revealed. You have nothing? He snarled. All this time, you were just as pathetic as him. He looked at the crowd. His professional reputation shattered. His financial future evaporated. Mark, I didn't know. Chloe pleaded. I swear I didn't know. She's telling the truth, I said. I hid my wealth from her. I wanted her to learn humility. I wanted her to understand the value of hard work. I adopted a simple life, so she wouldn't be poisoned by money. I did it because her mother asked me to. I looked at my daughter, my heart breaking all over again. But I failed, I admitted, my voice heavy with regret. Instead of learning humility, you learned shame. You were ashamed of the honest work that built the empire you so desperately craved. You judged me, your own father, based on the dirt under my fingernails and the clothes on my back. The crowd was watching, captivated by the drama. The elite society loved a good downfall. Mark took off his wedding ring, threw it at Chloe's feet. We're done, Chloe. I will not be made a fool of, and I certainly won't be marrying a pauper. He stormed off, following his weeping mother. The vultures were fleeing the scene. Chloe was alone at the altar. The perfect wedding was in ruins. The fairy tale was over. I walked over to her, knelt down. The anger drained away, leaving only a profound sadness. Chloe, I said softly. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen, filled with despair and shame. I reached into my pocket, pulled out Sarah's ring, the one Susan had called queen. Your mother wanted you to have this, I said, placing it in her trembling hand. She wanted you to remember what truly matters. Love, loyalty, integrity, things that money can't buy. I stood up. I love you, Chloe. I always have. But I cannot support the life you've chosen. You want to build a life? Go build it with your own hands. Maybe then you'll understand what it truly means to have value. I turned and walked away. The sound of her sobs followed me. I got back into the helicopter with Robert. As we lifted off, I didn't look down. I didn't want to see the destruction I had caused. The victory was bittersweet. I had achieved justice. I had exposed the hypocrisy. But I had lost my daughter. A week later, the story was all over the news. The handyman billionaire, the wedding crasher tycoon. I hated the attention. Chloe disappeared from social media. Robert told me she had moved out of the apartment, staying with a friend. Not Maria. Maria had left town in disgrace. Mark and Susan were facing fraud charges based on the evidence we provided. Chloe was facing lawsuits from the vendors of the wedding, the flowers from Holland, the famous violinist, the catering. I refused to pay. I let the consequences fall on her. It was part of the lesson, a hard lesson, but a necessary one. It's been 6 months now. I'm back in my workshop. The smell of sawdust is comforting again.
I found peace in the familiar routine.
I donated the entire trust fund to the children's hospital Sarah supported. I started a foundation to provide scholarships for trade schools. I decided to build a legacy that mattered, a legacy of kindness and hard work. Yesterday, I found a package outside my door. It was unmarked. Inside was a small wooden birdhouse. It was crudely made, the edges rough, the paint uneven. But it was solid. It was real. Attached to it was a note. I'm learning. I got a job. Waitressing. It's hard, but it's honest. I'm sorry, Dad. Can we start over? Tears streamed down my face as I held the birdhouse. It was the most valuable thing I owned. I picked up my phone, dialed her number. It rang a few times before she picked up. Hello, her voice was hesitant, uncertain, but stronger than before. Hi, sweetheart, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I got the birdhouse. It's beautiful. I paused, letting the words sink in. Would you like to come over for dinner? I'm making your favorite pancakes? I heard her crying on the other end of the line, soft, quiet tears of relief. Yes, Daddy, she whispered. I'd really like that. Sometimes you have to break everything down to the foundation before you can start building again. And as I waited for my daughter to come home, I realized that the most valuable things in life aren't covered in gold. They are covered in the honest dirt of hard work, the unconditional love of family, and the quiet grace of forgiveness. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot. 'Cause your time matters.